So I just want to share sort of a project I've been working on because I find that I learn the best from doing and engaging with these things. And so I've been playing with these different AI tools. I particularly have an interest in running things locally. I've mentioned that a few times. And so I've been working on something in the background that has actually come out way better than I expected. And so I'm going to share that. There's a comedy show that I produce called PodCube. Perry, I know you know of it. It's how we met.
Yes.
And I'm not going to talk much about PodCube, but I used PodCube as data for this. And so I have to explain just a tiny bit about it for the context, which is that the show is composed of a bunch of small vignettes, like small scenes from all over different places in time and space. Each episode is like a transmission from somewhere. And the show itself builds up a bunch of lore just based on recurring characters, locations, and names of businesses and things like that. It doesn't have a very linear story, but it has a consistent sort of universe with stories going on in the background. But creating it has become very difficult to keep all of that lore straight because like there's all these different businesses and characters and storylines. And because episodes come out years out of order in sort of the linear chronology of the story, it's pretty impossible for us to make heads or tails of it without like a wiki. And we can't maintain a wiki and make the show because it's just so much work with so much text. Right. And then it hit me that a large language model might be the exact tool to parse a bunch of text and be able to get general ideas from it. So yeah, I scripted up a couple of things and I used Whisper AI to transcribe every episode of the show. And it is, I don't know, have you messed with Whisper much for the transcription text, audio to speech?
I have. It's not bad. It is kind of like one of the better known and respected models, but even OpenAI is saying it's not like the be all end all. They're trying to move to more native models as well.
It is pretty good, and especially when it came out, it was better than a lot of people expected based on where other AI stuff was at the time. But it is starting to show its age. It has a tendency to repeat a lot of tokens. So like I would transcribe an episode and like a character would say, "Oh, hey," at some point, and there'd be like a second of silence after it. And it just goes crazy with silence. So then in the transcript, it would say, "Oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey," literally like repeating 30 to 40 times before picking back up and continuing.
I see that on auto transcription for YouTube videos sometimes.
Yep. That's Whisper. That must mean they're using Whisper on the back end. Cause that is
it'd cover up the entire screen.
Yeah.
With closed caption stuff of like, oh, or oh. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, there's, you can try, and so I fidgeted with, you can actually adjust various parameters like making the penalty for repeating tokens higher, and also like making it check for like, if you were repeating the same 3 words over and over, that's bad. Or like you can set the threshold for how many words you don't want it to repeat in a row. And I had no idea that was possible. There's like a lot of sort of tweaking and tuning you can do with it. But even so, I took all of these 101 transcripts of 101 episodes, which I just had it run in the background on my computer locally. So all of that came through my house. From a power usage perspective, because I have a power meter hooked up to my computer, not really, like almost negligible, the amount of power that it used really. It was probably like the equivalent of running a like StarCraft or like an older video game.
Right.
I took those transcripts, errors and all, like these horrible, badly formatted transcripts, concatenated them all together. So they're just one giant text file of every transcript of every episode of this podcast, full of mistakes. It's got like 3 to 4 characters in each episode. There is no speaker diarization. So it's just the words detected. Like literally, I wanted this to be better, but I was like, I can't invest that much time in this. It needs to be quick or else it's not worth it. And so I just gave the bad transcripts to an LLM, and the results have been staggeringly cool.
Which LLM?
So initially, I've been messing around with LM Studio for the first time, which I think you said you recently downloaded too. I've been very impressed with LM Studio. Have you?
I've not used it enough to form an opinion, but like as a framework for just enabling you to do a bunch of large language model experiments, I think it is the gold standard right now, right?
It absolutely. And I'm really impressed by how easy it was to use and how you can run it on lots of different hardware. Like you don't even need a particularly good computer because you can tweak and change a lot of it, and it's all super user friendly. It also has RAG capabilities. So that's what I thought would come in handy here. Retrieval augmented generation, which is where it's like searches through a large corpus of text and pulls relevant sections and then adding that to your prompt context window.
if you use some of these tools and it lets you upload like a knowledge document, that is RAG. It's putting it into a system. It's vectorizing it so that it can understand all the different weights and be retrieved by a large language model. Very, very powerful technique that helps ground it in source material.
There is some limitation with the implementation of it in LM Studio, though, in that it only ever grabs 3 citations, and I can't seem to get it to adjust that. And it will sometimes just grab the same citation 3 times. So my goal in this project was to do this entirely locally. And I probably should have said this at the outset, but like the goal explicitly was to have an LLM that we can prompt with questions like, give me all the details about a specific character and every time they appear, or things like that, and be able to then create like a wiki using data that we extract from the episodes that way. So the LLM just knows everything about PodCube. We ask it questions and then use that data to, either remind us of things we need to know for creating it or to create like an outward-facing wiki. Yeah. LM Studio wasn't up to the task, but Notebook LM from Google was. So that was the first step I made onto the cloud as far as the AI tools go, because I wanted to keep it local, but it wasn't working. And dude, Notebook LM is so cool. It has a lot of failure.
It does hallucinate every now and then. Like, the more stuff you give to it, the more like mushy it gets in like how it connects things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's not great at extracting specific things sometimes if you're looking for like a single instance, but when it comes to identifying broader trends or overarching themes in text, it's really good. And I honestly think that might have to do with how it does RAG under the hood before it hands it to Gemini for parsing.
They do have some special sauce in Notebook LM because they really consider it source grounded. So the highest amount of weight is on what you put in the knowledge base for that, and everything else is like secondary.
And even with the hallucinations, as a use case for a like creating a knowledge base of like a fictional show or something that isn't as like high stakes as something scientific or medical or news or politics, this is an incredible useful use case for AI, because now there's this Notebook LM that me and the co-creators of the show, we can just nip into, ask it a question in plain language like, hey, what was that? What parade was happening on like what day in something, with like the vaguest hint of what we remember. And it has given out like it is 99% accurate with lore for the show.
That is really cool.
Yeah. I just wanted to share that sort of process in case it gives anyone else who's listening ideas of like how you might use this for your own kind of project.
You know what I would do with that, or try if you haven't yet?
What's that?
Create the audio overview and then go into the mode where you can ask it questions and interrupt.
Oh, I haven't tried the interactive mode. I did.
Yeah, because it's basically like a radio call-in show. So they'll start off and then you'll like call in and go, oh, we have a question from a listener. And then you might be able to ask about some of the lore or even brainstorm with them kind of real time back and forth that way.
I am going to need to try that. I forgot that it had that mode. I did have it generate the overview just to hear what it said. And it was very funny because there's some extra prompting that goes into those, like their fake podcast host thing that makes it seem like a show where they're talking about sources. So they treated it with a gravitas that was very amusing to me because it would be like, oh, we have this transcript of like this guy who's really mad about shrimp for some reason. And they just seemed so like incredulous. But then they took a bunch of stuff for it's funny. These tools that I think are presented to like a businessy type audience have a lot of merit in creative use and in like sort of indie art use. Absolutely. And their lack of precision, I think, is not as much of a weakness in this arena.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be frustrating, like if you're trying to build your canon with that, like if you're really trying to have an authoritative wiki that would be released to fans, it might be frustrating when it hallucinates. But because you know the show, when it hallucinates, you'll go, oh, wait, that's not right. But that's interesting. That might be a premise for something to explore. Exactly.
Or to make it, because we initially, I was like, maybe it'd be cool if it was a public-facing thing that people could ask questions, but the hallucinations ruin it. But as an internal tool, it can generate like 90% of a Wikipedia-style page for a character or a business. And just like with a little bit of human intervention, that's still there. And who knows what kind of cool things it might suggest or hallucinate. So that's what I've been up to in my spare time of local AI experimentation. And I'm curious if anyone listening has messed around with using AI tools in their own creative projects. That I really want to hear about that. That's what tickles me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something I don't want to hear about necessarily, but probably should hear about, and we're going to hear about next, is AI video chatbots ending the world, Perry? Is that the prep document,
we're going
right?
to play around with how it might happen.
Oh, cool. Stick around for that.